So I remember the moment I turned 18, and it was the moment where everything shifted for me. I don't know about you, but it was the moment where I decided it's time for me to step out. It's time for me to move from my parents' house, right? Here was this moment, this opportunity to live on my own, right? I was living with these group of guys. It was now kind of like my own life, right? Sorry, Mom, I am out of here, right? No more you telling me what to do. Do laundry, do the dishes? Nah, this is my life. She said, yeah. She probably enjoyed that season. And this was it. I'm done. I'm out of here. And I'm now living with these guys. And this is it. I get to do whatever I want. No curfews. No one telling me to get up. This is how I want to live my life because I am the boss. Do you remember that moment? I know for some of you, it might have been a while. But still, that moment of independence, right? That moment where you were set free from the imprisonment and living under the oppression of your parents. This was your moment. But then life hits you, right? All of a sudden you wake up and you go, there's no food in the refrigerator. The bathroom starts to look a little rank. The house starts to smell a little funny. And you start to realize that even in your freedom, there's responsibility. This past couple of weeks, we've been having, more than a couple of weeks, we've been having this conversation on freedom. And today is kind of like the last day that we're having this conversation. And it's been really great. And so I advise you to go online and go to vintage242.com and click on sermons and listen to all of the series. Because Steve did a great job on communicating what does it mean for us to be free. But I remember 3 for me that kind of stood out. And it was the ones we were up here that one day. I don't know if you remember. But for those who don't, we had Elizabeth who came up and she shared the importance of what does it mean to be free when it comes to our identity and our personal image, and the importance of remembering that we are created in the image of God, that we get our self-worth and our identity from what God says and what the scriptures tells us, but not from anything else external. That when you begin to go to the external and look for validation and look for your identity in other things, you are actually lessening yourself because God always calls you to more. And then we had this really great conversation with Taylor and Steve about the conversation of sex and what healthy sex looks like, and what the scriptures tell us about what love is from agape, phileo, and eros. And what does it mean for us to live in this beautiful thing called sex, and even the dark side of sex, what porn does to us. And then we had another conversation that was about generosity, about your money, and about how God is intended and his whole intention is for you to become this generous person. That generosity is not about an amount, but it's about the person that you're becoming. And that tithing is the reps. Tithing is the gateway, the path to generosity. And so we talked about what does it look like for us to live in freedom. And so as we close this series, and this one's going to be a little bit short today too, but I just kind of want to refresh and just kind of remind you, and I know sometimes when we speak, sometimes thoughts and points that kind of run over our head, but if you haven't heard yet, if no one has ever told you, God came to set you free. The whole importance, all of him is designed to set you free. So if you forget anything that I say this morning, if you don't remember any of my points and they sound confusing, just take away this one thing. God came to set you free. We're going to go to Galatians chapter 5, verse 13. And this is where we're going to play. It says, "You, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love." Isn't that amazing? You were called to be free. Let's just stop there. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that thought-provoking? Isn't that just amazing? You were destined to be free. You were created to be free. Like, let that sink in. God's intention was for you to always be free. See, I don't know your past. I don't know where you've come from. I don't know all of the past, but I do know what you're called to. I don't know where you came from, but I know what you're called to, and you're called to freedom. You're called to live a life of freedom. And there's some of us, there's voices that are trying to keep us in our past, and we are living under the weight of slavery by our choices. But God is saying, hey, no, I am calling you free, which means you got to be mindful. You got to pay attention to what are the things that are calling you. What are they drawing you to? Are they calling you to freedom? Or are they calling you for bondage? Is it the illusion of freedom? Or is it actually true freedom? I don't know about you, but sometimes when I was growing up, especially in my early walks of faith, especially when you become like a new follower of Jesus, and sometimes even before that, we are more concerned with the freedom to choose than choices that set us free. I'll say it again. We are more concerned with the freedom to choose than choices that set us free. I'm more concerned with, I get to do this, and I get to do that, and I get to, especially living in LA, man, I get to go to this party, I get to hang with that person, I get to do this over here. We're more concerned with the freedom to choose than choices that set us free. And it took me a while to process that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I had the freedom to choose, and I just chose like the wrong people to do life with. Those people did not set me free. Those people did not lead me down a path for myself and for my freedom. And if you're not careful, you can end up making choices where those choices end up becoming your master. So you look free because you have the freedom to choose, but actually it's the choices that become your master. I mean, I remember there's been times, and this is so trivial, right? But you can apply it to a lot of things. I used to be a club promoter, right? Believe it or not, in LA. And so, I mean, like, I had two phones. I had my normal phone, and then I had, like, my burner phone. You know what I'm saying? It was a phone number that I texted people. And it was just kind of like my way of promoting. And I would go to these clubs, whatever, you know, and obviously you do stuff. And I mean, like, it's so trivial, it's so stupid, but it was just kind of like I got to the point where I was like, okay, cool, I need a cigarette whenever I smoke. I had the freedom to do whatever I want. But once I started making those choices again and again and again and again, that choice ended up becoming my master. That choice ended up telling me when I needed to smoke. That if I needed to feel good, I needed to have this. And you can take that and you can apply that to whatever that is in your life. But you have to be careful. We're more concerned with the freedom to choose than the choices that set us free. The freedom to choose is all about me. It's all about what I can take. It's all about what I can consume to satisfy my soul and to satisfy my wants and my needs. See, God says, no, you are called to be free. That means that God's intention, his commands, everything that comes from the mouth of God, his essence, who he is for your freedom. Which is just so like this is the part that I'm like, I want to sit in this because it sounds such a simple truth. But if you're not careful, you will just run past this truth and you will live a life of bondage and slavery, thinking that this is what is meant to be following Jesus. Where God is saying, no, the whole intention, the reason why I came down was to set you free. The story at the beginning of the scriptures was about God setting his people free. So you, my brothers and sisters, you were called to be free. You were called to be free. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. I'm going to be honest with you. This is the part that I didn't want to focus on. This is the part that is kind of like, because this is what you do in church, right? You focus on the do nots, because that's like the easy thing to do. Whenever you read the scriptures, there's this profound truth, this profound statement. And right after it, we have the do nots. So what we typically do is we just skip over that truth. We skip over that beautiful statement, that statement that goes beyond eternity. You were called to be free. And we focus on the do nots. Do not. And I'm sitting here and I'm kind of like, I get it though. It's just easier. It's just sexier to focus on the do nots, right? We don't stay long enough to focus on the truth, and we tend to focus on the do nots. So all we do is we focus on the do nots. And then we're good at doing the do nots. I don't know about you, but like I am good at doing the do nots. All my life, I'm doing the do nots. And so you live this cyclical circle where all of a sudden you come in and you focus on the do nots, but then we end up doing the do nots, and then we live in guilt and shame, and then go back into focusing on the do nots. And then you go back to not doing the do nots, and then you just keep going back over and over and over again. Why? Because you're focusing on the do nots. I don't know about you, but like I'm good at focusing on the do nots. I don't need to focus on the do nots anymore. But if we spend our whole lives focusing on the do nots, you won't have any time to do the do's. There's plenty of things to do. My gosh, I'm just not thinking about it right now. Adam and Eve, they focused on the do not. Yet they had the whole garden to do whatever they wanted to do. And they focused on the do nots. Some of us are living under the guilt and shame because all you're doing is focusing on the do nots. And then you mess up by doing the do nots. And then you just keep doing the do nots. But if you start to focus on the do's, you won't have time for the do nots. I've said this plenty of times over and over again. Fill your life up with the do's, and you won't have any more room for the do nots. There's a statement, and I've heard this before, and I think it's just mind-boggling, so just go with me here. God has given you so much freedom in such a way that he leaves no room to control you through obligation. I'll say it one more time. God has given you so much freedom in such a way that it leaves no room to control you through obligation. Have you ever had those moments where you're driving and it's just you, right? Especially, I've been learning more and more of this in Georgia, especially from LA. There's just like tons of people. But in Georgia, you're driving and you come to that part where you come to a four-way stoplight, right? And there's no one there, but the light turns red as you're driving, right? You're driving and it's green and you're doing fine, cool, whatever. Nobody else is by me. I'm by myself, listen to your music, Taylor Swift, whatever. And then all of a sudden it turns yellow and you're like, okay, cool, I'm going to speed up a little bit, right? I'm trying to beat this light. Then all of a sudden it turns red. So then you slow down, right? You stop, right? Because you've been trained to stop. And then you're sitting there and you're just kind of like, okay, I'm here, but there's no one else around me. So why did the light turn red? Have you ever had those moments? Or have you had those moments where you're sitting there and then you start kind of like moving forward, trying to like activate the light, you know? Or in LA, I would always flicker my lights. Somehow I'm thinking there's cameras that go, okay, cool, he's there, so we're going to let him through. But you're sitting there, and you're sitting there for such a long time. And now you're just kind of like, okay, the light's not working, right? It was working before when it turned from green to yellow to red, but now that I'm here for more than 2 minutes, it's not working. So you're sitting there, and you're frustrated. So then all of a sudden you sit there, and you're just kind of like, okay, I could go. Right? I mean, like, I could go. I mean, at this point, this is more like a recommendation. You know what I'm saying? Like, because the whole point of it is for other people, but it's just me. It's just you. You're at the light, right? Have you ever had moments or laws that didn't apply to that exact moment, but the reason that law is there is because it applies to other moments, right? The reason why you were stopping at the light is because you were trained to stop when there's other cars around you. So Kenzie and I just came back from Florida. It was her birthday, and so we went there to go celebrate. And so it was really beautiful. It was raining, but it was still good, so beautiful. And we're coming back, and we're getting ready to turn onto the freeway. So we're in our lane. It's a protected lane, right? Turning left to go on the freeway. And all of a sudden, so the light on the other side is green, so the cars are coming this way. And as we're sitting there, this guy just in his white truck is driving down, and you're just thinking like, oh, he's just going to keep on going his way. Homeboy decides to come down and skip in front of all of us on a protected light, and then go into oncoming traffic, and then wiggle his way through to get onto the highway. Have you had moments where you're kind of like, dude, what are you doing? Bro, you could have gotten into an accident, right? And in that moment, he was doing what you wanted to do when nobody else was looking. See, the reason, you know why we have laws? You know the reason why we have laws? It's because the government knows that they can't trust you with your freedom. You can't be trusted with your freedom, so we need some rules to stop you. Because what would you do if you were completely free? There's this thing, you've heard of them maybe before, the FDA. Right? The whole government agency is designed to watch people, make sure that they don't do anything that's crazy when it comes to the farmers and the ranchers. They make sure that they're not trying to stretch a dollar by possibly affecting other people's health, whether it be their neighbors, their parents, their kids. There's a whole organization to make sure that no one is taking shortcuts to make a little bit more money. Like, why would they do that, right? Why would they do that? But the government, they know what you would do if you were free. Or even the SEC, I'll make sure I get this right. It regulates the securities industry and protects investors to make sure there are fair markets. Why would there be anyone there that wants to somehow make the markets unfair? Why would anybody want to somehow line their pocket with more money at the cost of someone else's? Because the government knows. The government knows what you would do if you were free. Every agency and law-creating agency is designed to actually stop us acting in our freedom because of what we would do if we were free. And I feel like this is the part where God, you got it wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, you got it wrong. You're supposed to make sure that we don't go too far. And you do that, right? By guilt and shame. You're supposed to have guilt and shame to keep us in line. A little fear, a little condemnation, right? To keep us on the right path. But he did the complete opposite. He died on the cross for you to live completely free. God had no leverage for our actions to keep us in line. Instead, he died on the cross. He took on flesh and blood, stepped into human history, walked among us, lived a perfect, sinless life, died on the cross, 3 days later, risen from the dead so that you could live in freedom, that you can live in grace. And I'm like, God, do you not know what happens when we live in freedom? We tend to do things for ourselves. We tend to be self-indulgent. Yet God says, no, I'm going to give you freedom. You are completely free. He is forgiving you of all your sins from past and future. So you're called to be free. And in that freedom, you are supposed to live in that freedom. God says, no, you are free to live. God calls you to be free, and then he calls you to live in that freedom. But don't use it for your own selfish desires, but to serve others. It says, you, my brothers and sisters, were called to be free, but do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. There was no other person that was more free than Jesus. He showed the ultimate expression of what it means to be free. That true freedom is service. True freedom is humbly moving in acts of service. See, he allowed himself to be stripped of dignity, that humility part. He allowed himself to be beaten, mocked, and spit upon. He allowed himself to be dragged to the cross and nailed to a tree. And he allowed them to raise him on that cross. And in their minds, they thought that he was no longer free. They thought that he was captive. And he was captive by their power, by their violence, and by their darkness. But I want you to know that in that moment where Jesus looked like a slave, he was more free than ever. Because in that moment, Jesus chose to serve. And he chose to sacrifice himself. At the most epitome of what it looked like to be enslaved, to be in captivity, it was the most freeing moment of Jesus. Because in that moment, it was the ultimate sacrifice of freedom. It was the ultimate expression of freedom, which was sacrifice. So when you are free, you begin to understand that the act of freedom is to serve in love. It's not for yourself. But do not use your freedom to indulge the flesh. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. See, when you are immature, it's all about you. It's all about you and what you can take and what you can take from others. But when you are mature, you begin to know that it's about others. See, when you're immature in your freedom, you think it's all about what I can take. But when you're mature in your freedom, you know that it's all about what I can give. See, when you're immature in your freedom, it's all about what I can consume. But when you're mature in your freedom, it's all about what can I create for others. John 8:36, it says this, so if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed. Isn't that beautiful? See, if the Son sets you free, it doesn't matter what anybody else says. You're free. Because when Jesus says you're free, you're free. There's no strings attached. Because all the other things in life that say they are free, they're actually going to cost you something. And Jesus goes, hey, listen, I've already paid that price. That price is already done. That's price is already paid for. The moment that you cross that line of faith, the moment that you give your life to freedom, to Jesus, he says you're free. If the Son of Jesus says you're free, you are free indeed. That's it. There's nothing else that can take you away from that freedom. And there's nothing else that God is going to hoard over your head to try to get you to operate in a certain way out of obligation. He goes, no, you were free. When the Son sets you free, it sets you free from all the things that hold you under and hold you down that no one else can see. I can only imagine the things that we are all carrying. I always tell people when you begin to give your life to Jesus, he begins to move the big rocks in your life. Hey, stop doing this, stop doing that. Let's move into this. But then he begins to address the pebbles in your pockets that nobody else sees. And there's some of you, there are chains that are holding you down. It is drowning you in your own choices by your own guilt and shame. And Jesus is saying, hey, I want to set you free. Because that is my intention. That is my purpose. Top of Galatians 5, it says this. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm then, and do not let yourselves be burdened again by the yoke of slavery. See, God's intention is to set you free. God's choice is to set you free. But what ends up happening is we end up keep choosing the choices that actually keep us enslaved. It says, yourself by being burdened again by the yoke of slavery. So you have this tension. God is always designing, God's always trying to fight for your freedom. But there has to be a sense of responsibility on ourselves where we go, I am no longer going to make choices that keep me enslaved. I'm no longer going to make choices, even though they look good and they look amazing and they look like the presence and have the corners and the shadows of freedom. I'm not going to choose those because I know that it actually keeps me a slave. And that is why it's so important to be in community. It's so important to come to church. It's so important to open up the scriptures, because it's a constant reminder that God is always fighting for your freedom. And the sad part is that when you have decided to follow Jesus, but then you live a life of slavery. And that is not God's intention for your life. So there has to be a moment. There has to be a moment when you look at your life and you're going, I'm going to take personal responsibility for the choices in my life. I may not be able to control all the choices that are affected to me, but I'm able to take control and responsibility in my life for the choices that I'm making in my life. Because God says, I am trying to set you free. My intention is to set you free. But I keep making choices and choices and choices and choices that keep me in slavery. So maybe this is a reminder. Maybe this is a refresher as we close this series. You were called to be free. And you were called to live in that freedom. But you were also to act in that freedom. To love and to serve others. Humbly. We're going to move into a ministry time. I told you it's going to be short. I'm short and simple. And maybe this is a moment where we're going to have our prayer teams here. Maybe this is a moment for you where you're like, I'm tired of being bogged down. I am tired of the chains. I am tired of the chains that I put myself on, and it's time for me to break free. Because there is freedom in your life. There is a life that God wants to give you that is designed for you to live your most beautiful life, not just for yourself, but that so you can be a light and a voice of hope for others. And I think a lot of times most people don't really get the whole Christian thing is because we think we're free. And we're really good at disguising our freedom if we're slaves. And I feel like a lot of times today, people, their BS meter is really good now. And they can tell. God wants to set you free. And I know I'm sounding like a broken record, but I hope that this is just piercing your heart and your soul. I will keep saying free because you're supposed to be free. And so maybe when we have our prayer team, this is a moment for you to go, yeah, there's this one thing. It just keeps holding me back. This is the thing that I need to offer to God. This is the thing that I need to lay down. This is your moment. This is the moment that's for you. There's life on the other side of that choice. There's things that God wants to do with you on the other side. But you've got to make that choice. You have to decide. And I always tell you this. I always say this to myself. God's not going to take personal responsibility for the choices that you can make on your own. You've got to make that choice. This isn't a sit in the jacuzzi. All right, Jesus, bless me. This is what are the places in my life, God? You've done all the work. I don't have to earn your love. I don't have to earn your grace. I don't have to earn your freedom. But that doesn't mean that we don't have choices to make. And we're going to have communion here. I mean, gosh, this is an example. The broken body, the blood that was shed, that was for your freedom. That was for you. So maybe this is a moment for us to come up and go, God, I forgot. I forgot that you set me free. I forgot that the whole thing of you coming onto earth and stepping into earth was for my freedom. So let communion be that moment for you. Tithing. The whole point of it is to free you from the scarcity, the mindset of scarcity. It's for you to go to this mindset of trusting God. It's to set you free. from feeling that you always have to have the money and the resources. And God goes, no, I've got you. But I need you to set you free. I have to change your mind. And so tithing is that place where, again, you hear me like a broken record, but it is the reps of saying, God, I trust you. Tithing is one of the few things that you are actively, practically showing, God, I trust you. I said this last time. It's easy to say, God, I trust you. I say that all the time, God, I trust you. It's a little bit different when you start going, God, I trust you. I am giving you what you have given me, and I'm giving you 10%. Watch what I can do with the 90. So we're going to have a moment of ministry time, and let this be a moment for you to take a moment and to look into your life and say, God, where are the places? Where are the places that you were trying to set me free, but I am not giving you access to that part of my life? Because here's the thing, man. If you're not careful, living under slavery can become really comfortable. I started thinking about this when it comes to the end of the Civil War. I was Googling this because I was kind of like, here you had these people that were free, but they said that a lot of them went back to being slaves. Now, I know there's all these external things and everything else, but it was more comfortable to live underneath the slave mindset than to be free and to go create. And if you're not careful, you can get really comfortable. You can get really comfortable and you can feel like you're just free. And God goes, that's not freedom. Because I came to give you ultimate life and ultimate freedom.